Okay, welcome to the next chapter of the surrender experiment. Chapter 15, The Prince and the Pauper. Tutoring Alan Robertson really didn't change my lifestyle much at all. We arranged our schedules such that whenever I went to town to teach, I would spend a few hours with Alan after class. We met in the president's office at Santa Fe campus downtown near the university. We were quite the pair. Alan was a very successful three-piece suit banker, and I was a ponytailed yogi in denim jeans and sandals. I had no idea what to expect, but Alan turned out to be an exceptionally warm and open-minded person. He was also extremely grateful for my help. This is not to say that there weren't some awkward moments. The first culture clash was regarding payment for my services. I told him that I didn't want to be paid for tutoring him. He insisted, but I refused. He went on to reason with me that he was a successful banker who was now president of a college, and I was a student living off of a $250 a month fellowship. Which was true enough, but it was also true that I had spent everything I had buying the land and building my house. Nonetheless, I was tutoring him as an act of surrender to the flow of life, and I did not want to be paid. In time, Alan accepted our relationship on non-business terms, and we became good friends. Sometimes he would come out to my land to study, and we would take long walks together. He enjoyed learning about my unique way of life, and I enjoyed meeting the very special man behind the banker suit. Well, special, hey? A few times I even accepted his wife's invitation to have dinner at their home. I began to see my entire relationship with Alan as another one of life's magical gifts, despite my initial resistance. Alan had progressed enough towards his doctorate to sit for his qualifying exams. He surprised me when he proposed that I go ahead and take mine also. I had no interest in doing so, really, especially since we had only prepared for 2 of my 3 major areas of study. But I surrendered to his wishes. I signed up to take the 2 exams we had studied for and planned to put the 3rd off for another time, or not do it at all. When I received notice back from the university, the administration had mistakenly signed me up for all 3 exams. Now what was I supposed to do? Surrender to all of that as well? I started observing myself to see why taking the 3rd exam threatened me so much. I had no intention of actually finishing my degree, so why did it even matter? What I discovered was that it was simply the fear of failing in the eyes of others. I knew that if I sat for my written exam in public finance, a field I was completely unprepared for, I would fail miserably. And that prospect of failure disturbed me and set the inner voice on a non-stop dialogue about how I should avoid the exam. What an opportunity to get rid of that part of me. I no longer saw the administration's mistake as a problem. I saw it as a challenge to let go further of myself. So I decided to take all 3 exams and willingly accept the experience of failing the 3rd one. The first 2 exams went very smoothly. I had done a lot of work with Alan on these areas, and I knew the material reasonably well. As the day for the 3rd exam approached, I strengthened my heart for the inevitable. I would march into the exam, willingly let the part of my ego die a painful death and fail. What ended up happening changed me for the rest of my life. The day before the exam, I allowed myself to pull down the public finance textbook for the first time. I took a large book outside and sat beside it as I did my yoga. When I finished my postures, I felt quiet and peaceful and totally prepared to face the next day's ordeal, as if to examine the sword that I was about to fall on. I opened the book to an arbitrary place. I read both pages that appeared before me and performed a ritual 3 times before holding the book up to the heavens as my sign of a willingness to surrender. The next day, I watched closely to see what the voice would have to say about this. I was surprised to be feeling very peaceful about the upcoming event after my morning meditation. I pulled down the book one more time and opened to an arbitrary page, and it turned out to be one of the 3 places that I had already opened the day before. That's so cool. It's like pulling that same card, Nurture, over and over again. I reviewed the complex chart on that page and put the book back on the shelf for the last time. Later that morning, I parked outside the business school and meditated for a while before going in. I still felt reasonably quiet inside. There was a sense of peaceful resignation. I remember feeling I had passed the real test. So true. I had proven that I was capable of deeply surrendering if life presented me with something that I really didn't want to do. I went upstairs to the economic department, and the administrative assistant handed me the exam. As I took it from her hands, I gleaned over the 6 essay questions, of which I had to answer 3. I immediately froze, and tears began to well up in my eyes. 3 of the questions were exactly about the 3 places I had arbitrarily opened the book the day before. I was stunned. I stood there for a long time, unable to even take a breath. How could this be possible? It had happened again. In the name of transcending myself, I had surrendered and willingly faced my personal fears. Then at the last moment, instead of certain hell, I was lifted into heaven. I went into the designated room and wrote and wrote. The seeds of inspiration were fresh in my mind. I was even able to reproduce and embellish upon the chart that I had opened to twice. I turned in the notebooks and headed home in a very different state of mind than I had expected. Driving to the exam, I had felt as though life was asking me to willingly let a part of me die that day. But now I realized that life was actually asking me to get out of my own way and let her do her thing. I was so glad I had been willing to take that risk. Days later, I was called in by Dr. Golfman and complimented on the excellence of my public finance exam. This recognition from the chairman of the department should have pleased me, but instead it actually made me feel guilty. So interesting. I recounted the whole story and asked if I had somehow done something wrong. Dr. Golfman got up, placed his hand on my shoulder, and told me to stop trying to be so humble. Then he directed me out of my office. Wow. Well, for me, reading that makes me feel like taking some time now to dive into what has recently been happening and see if there's a way that I can move forward with less fear and more surrender and more trust. I mean, we're reading from a #1 New York Times bestseller, which is extremely hard to be a #1 New York Times bestseller. And we've now heard quite a few amazing things have come into place. I mean, how many things have we been striving for that he's now got? Like, he's got a vehicle, he's got a job, he's got a home, he's got property, he has good friends, he's got praise, excellence, reputation. Students think he's one of the best teachers. He gets tons of time to meditate. He's eating well. He's in shape. I mean, the guy, we're barely kicking the book off, and the guy has, really everything. And he's done it all without trying to get anything. It certainly makes me pause. And I think it's a great message out there on YouTube, because I see a lot of messages about being better, studying harder, learning more, writing, trying. There's so much striving, so much yang energy, so much grasping and climbing. So it's very, very nice to hear about the opposite and that it works. So, I mean, both work. It's just what's your vibe and rhythm. I can definitely say that before coming to Mexico, I was certainly bought into all of the business schools and masterminds and writing the check for $1 million and staring at it and believing it's going to come to me, all that stuff. So now, after moving to Mexico and the things that are unfolding over the past 2 years here, I feel like I've let die a lot of that part of me, and I no longer want or strive for any of that. Like, really, I mean, it didn't get me where I wanted to go anyways, so I might as well try this approach. And it's making me think, talking to you, about a girl that I absolutely loved, that I read. And she had adrenal fatigue and was basically in bed for 2 years. And same thing like this. I have to figure out who that is. I would like to read that next, actually. I think it'd be great if these books focused on that, like the more allowing, dropping into trust, like the more gentle support that maybe other channels aren't giving you. Anyways, that's it for today.